Today, we are going to recreate modern melodic techno drops in Ableton. I had another video on Friday where I actually show you complete track, and actually you can even get that project file if you want to see more release deconstruction. I will add it here so that you can take a look. But other than that, let's sit down and start making some drops. So the first drop is from our Lord and Savior, Stephan Bodzin, and his latest release, Diamant. I hope I didn't butcher the word. But let's jump in and start with that one. As this is a drop tutorial, we will start with the break itself. The first thing that is remarkable in this track is that gliding synth sound on the background all the time. So to get that glide sound, you need to get the notes down. And in this case, we are in the D minor. So what I did is just layer the D, and we have another D, D4, so 2 octaves above. And then on top of that, we have another D. But because of this huge difference in the octaves, there will be gliding sound. And what you need to do is just play this one. Basically take off the plate, maybe dropping down the leg and opening up the keyboard, which means that when we play the higher notes, the cutoff will open more, so that we can get this glide effect a bit more drastic. And so because the cutoff is opening now. The most important thing here is just you need to play the glide a bit to get that right sound. We have almost like the right sound. The main issue here now is we need to get a reverb and delay so that we can have this swarming effect on the background. Let's create a return channel, and this one will be just a regular echo, and then we're gonna put 100% and put in a ping pong and sand a little bit. And of course you need a bit of room reverb, the whole reverb, to get everything a bit more glued. Put a reverb here on the big hole. I think there's one there, but I don't want that one. I'm gonna want something a bit darker. Big one, let's try. The one thing that bothers me at the moment is that low end, because we don't want that. We only need that swing wing sound. So I'm gonna cut this off. And we can even use the same thing on the whole reverb. I think we can also cut a bit for the echo here. We can definitely come back and play around the delay time, depending on how we feel, how the original was. But this is good enough for the start. And the other thing that was in this track was like having this really big pad sound to create whole break and even the drop itself. So this one actually I have already shown in a video how the pad sound is made. I will add it here so that you can take a look. But now I'm just gonna call it in so that we have this going, but we will take a look what is important with that sound. So we are using again Diva. In this case, we are aiming for really this big pad sound. That's the reason we have a slight attack and long decay. We are using all the oscillators, and we are even have slight FM and slight LFO modulation to the tune itself. So it sounds like this. And a cool chord progression on top of that. It's not really that complicated, but the notes are pretty stacked so that we have this big sound. For this type of melodic techno tracks, it's really important that you create this kind of deep ambient. And on top of that original track, the reference track, the Diamant, had this really nice plug sound with really nice arpeggio. I'm gonna make that one also from the Diva. I think the first thing that we should take a look at is that the notes itself. So we are basically playing this driving note all the time, and then we are going a little bit up and down, creating these tiny pockets of melodies to make it a bit more interesting than having this single driving sound. And the more important thing is actually, you see the velocities are playing around. So when we are playing the driving part, we are just up and down. Let's almost sawtooth the velocities. But when we play the chorus, we have louder parts. So when we use the velocity to open the cutoff filter maybe and decide how much the volume envelope is applied, this will be very useful because the driving part will be quieter and having this groove, and then the melody parts will be louder just by using the velocity itself. And I know it sounds a bit complicated straight ahead, but in Diva it's quite easy. What we are going to do first, go for the presets, and I'm going to go for the templates, and then we are going to go for Gypsix. It comes with this one. What I want is the UFB filter simply because this is a bit more aggressive, and then I'm going to go for the analog filter here. If I play this one, you will see the first issue. So we don't have this envelope playing with the cutoff. So what we're going to do, bring down the cutoff so that we can make the envelope, and short decay envelope, same here, with release. Now we have the envelopes, but it's not applied to the filter. We need to bring the envelope too so that it can open up the cutoff. For the sound itself, I'm going to also activate the noise. And here you can actually decide how much both oscillators are applied. So I'm going to pick this 16, so 1 octave down. And for the mix button, I'm going to go up a little bit so that we have mix of 2. And then we're going to apply this keyboard, and here we're going to go for the velocities. So when the velocity increases, we're applying both envelopes more so that it will open the cutoff more, it will increase the volume more. Now you can hear the difference. I'm going to give it a slight glide. The most important thing here, once we get the sound, how you actually make the other things, the effects, is so that it really fits in the ambience. Because if we try to play it now together with other things, it doesn't fit quite because it's just too in your face at the moment. So we have to fix that. The first thing we will do is delay. So delay adds here, and we're going to solo this and send to here. Not synchronize both of them, 2, 3, so that the delay will be so slightly different in different channels. So we have this nice ambience going on. Another thing, of course, sending it to the reverb. The other thing that we should maybe fix at the moment is actually the tempo. We started with 120, it should be 125, so it should be faster. So the main idea with the sound is, if we go back, is at the beginning of the sound, we don't have much envelope, so we are going to modulate the envelope quite a bit, so it's really soft, like starts like this. And the other thing that was in the original track is having this auto pan in the background. So the sound is always moving right and left. So what we're going to do, put an amount, I think it was in the 1/3. Maybe it was lower like this. And that's not enough. And there is another auto pan. Of course, probably he's not using auto pan, but this time it was like a sidechain. What I'm going to do, I'm going to just this invert version and put a triangle so that we have this one, and put the phase all the way up so that we have this single knob. So if I put it 100%, you will see the effect immediately. It will automate the volume. So we will decrease the amount so that it's not that much all the time. And together with the track, I think the one final thing we need here is probably kind of overdrive it a bit. The sound itself was a bit fatter on this area, like in the low area. You can immediately see what it does to the sound. It's a very simple trick, but it's quite effective, especially if you are aiming for this driving sound. If you play one more time. See how much better it becomes because of this velocity controlling the cutoff and the volume amount. So when the melody plays, suddenly we have the higher volume, and then when the melody ends, we return back to this like going right up and down, like sliding vibe. And I felt like this is one of the important thing in this track, like all these small nuances makes everything a bit stronger. The other thing is adding this white noise ambience so that it gives that rhythm in the track all the time. So let's add this one as well. To start with, we have just a simple offbeat noise hit. We are not using any oscillators right here, but we are using the noise. So in this one, and we are applying a slight effects. So it sounds like this without effects. But in Bodzin tracks is always swerving around. And the main idea here was using the echo and using autopan to almost like a train going vibe, right? And together sounds like this now. And then a classic Bodzin thing here will be like having this clap sound, like giving the tempo during the break. That is just a simple clap sound, really. Let's quickly add that. So this one is just from our deep melodic sample pack, a simple clap sound, but it's a bit organic. It just needs a bit reverb, so we can send it to our big hole probably. On top of that, we need to create the main ambience by adding a simple noise sound. So I'm going to just add a simple noise sound. Just to fill up the ambience a bit, because we have a really big ambience going on at the moment. To be honest, this is the core of the main break in the track. The most important thing was just automating everything. So let me switch the full track so that you can see full automation, and we can go through a bit more the return effects as well. We have to talk about a bit with the shimmer, I think. As you can see, we don't have much channels because this is kind of a core clean track. The first thing is the kick and the bass. They are not really too different in the sense. Sounds like this. It's basically just kick and tom. The both is coming from our sample packs, Mercury Core sample pack and Mercury Melodic Techno sample pack. And then we have these driving hats. The first one is just the driving hats. Sidechain the kick. And of course we are modulating the attack and decay to give this kind of really driving vibe and slight groove on top of that. It's the same thing here, the same idea, but the sample is different, making it brighter. And then of course a closed hat style shaker. It's basically just deriving a high-end sound, I would say. But the more important thing is, of course, like I said, how the track evolves during the break. The first thing is, of course, taking a look at the pad sound. And if you are aiming for this type of deep ambient breaks, you have to unfortunately automate a lot and play with the parameters a lot. And in this case, we are automating the frequency, so it gets brighter and brighter. So the sound gets really big. And the other reason that sound gets really big is we are slightly increasing this envelope amount. And another important thing is actually the decay amount. So the decay gets longer and longer. Hence the perception of this big pad sound. And two important things. The first thing is the reverb. And actually I'm using Valhalla Shimmer now to get this really big reverb sound. So it's really bright and shimmery, hence the shimmer. This one is Valhalla Shimmer. Really in the bright color mode. And the second one here is, of course, another vintage reverb, and this time this one is smaller. Of course, compared to the shimmer is smaller, but because we are in the break part, we want this long reverbs on the returns, so that we have this really big, deep, whooshy ambient. Sounds like this. So this one sits a bit on the middle area, not as bright as the shimmer itself, and shorter as well. So as you can see, like the shimmer part was really long and bright, giving this area. The vintage part is still long, but a bit darker, so that we have this whole feel from it. And we are actually using it to automate as well. Here you can see we are fixed amount and we are increasing right before the break. And even same thing with the shimmer, like shimmer is low here and then increasing. And this is for that driving sound. Sounds like this. And the other thing that I did here that we didn't have before is just adding a noise layer. So it sounds like this. I feel like the original noise was not enough. And I think slightly play with the parameters. If you take a look, looks like this, or more or less it looks same, to be honest. Not much difference here. Idea is still same. We have the gain first. The gain meaning that I have a utility here that I'm playing around. Like at the beginning, it's louder because the cutoff is all the way down, so the track is really quiet. And then we have noise gain, so increase all the time. So the noise goes up, makes it a bit more splashy, a bit more brighter. And of course, the usual suspects, right? If we go to Diva, we have modulating the frequency, opening up, and the modulation tab, opening up the envelopes or applying more envelope, and then opening up the cutoff at the same time. And then of course, it really gets bigger and bigger and more in your face, so we really wait for this drop. Even it's a single sound, because of all this automation, it almost feels like there are a lot of elements in the sound, even though it's not. I think that's it. More or less, like you have to play a lot with the main elements to make them really nuanced, giving really this emotion that both synth tracks always has. But let's do start the end so that you can hear a bit more, and I can show you in the meantime those automations. So let's go. If you are enjoying the video up to now, and if you feel like it's adding something to you, please consider subscribing to the channel and hit that like button so that I know and I can make more videos like this in the future and keep motivated. But this was the first one. Let's take the second one, and the second one will be one of the popular producers lately, ARTBAT. And I had a lot of problems with this one because of the content ID, so I had to change the chord progression so that at least I can upload it. But let's take a look. So this track starts with this big pad sound. So let's start with this one. So I will show both of them, like how it was in the original track. In the original track, they had this really big cinematic chord progression. The main reason I think here is that there was a vocal here. I think they want to keep everything a bit more dramatic, a bit more cinematic, so that to push the vocal to the front. What I did for the tutorial video is just simplify it a little bit, because we didn't have vocals. I didn't need to make it so cinematic, but it sounds like this. This is more like a Jupiter 8 style sound. I just used Serum, to be honest. What I did though, I got this Super Soul style sound. If I take this off and use those LFOs to modulate the position so that we have the slight movement. And use same LFO even for the second oscillator. This one is the Moog. It just alters between like a square wave and sawtooth. And of course a cutoff filter. And the main trick was adding this big plate reverb. Push it on the background and add a chorus. This was just the first layer. There was a lot of layers of pads to it. Like I said, they create this really cinematic effect. The second one is a bit more brighter version of it. And here I simplify the notes as well, just to focus on the melody. It sounds like this. This one is from my preset pack, so my survival presets. The main idea is the same, more or less, the unison with the sawtooth. So it is have brighter sound. Let me show you the effects as well. So we have a bit chorus, reverb, a bit EQing, brightening it up, and a bit filter and compression, and together. On top of that, you often see that there is a simple piano sound, just to kind of emphasize the first hit of the sound. So I just use a simple piano from Ableton. The same chord progression. Really soft. You can barely hear it together, really. It's easier to maybe hear it here. Really soft, like making the cinematic ambience a bit more. And on top of that, of course, we had this just a bass layer to fill up the low and make everything really warm and even bigger. So we are just following the main root notes here, and the sound itself is like this. Again, I'm not complicating things here, just using a bit unison and then 2 soft scale wave sound and a bit distortion. Together. We can definitely feel this big cinematic sound here. One of the remarkable thing in this track is actually what I call is break into a break. So we have the first break with vocal that goes on top, like it raises and drops to another really quiet part, kind of a break. But this kind of secondary break is shorter, and then it goes to the main drop. So in the secondary break, there was like a really melodic techno, plugs, and then arpeggio. And this really creates this kind of 2 different things combined together in the ARTBAT tracks, I will say. But before that, there was one more thing, which is very cinematic. This like string sounds like this. It gives really this cinematic vibe in the track. Again, we are using Serum to make it super rich and cinematic. I'm using 2 sawtooths, really 7 unison on both, so a lot of noises, and then having this smoother envelopes on both. And the filter is quite open. And some distortion, chorus, delays, reverb, just to make it really big here. If we play it here. So we really creating this big feel. And like I said, this drops into another break, which is really fun. And here we have first arpeggio. Arpeggio itself looks like this. In the original track is arpeggio not like this actually. It comes with, it was a bit more something like this, but I had to change it to make the different thing. So the idea is super simple. First the serum part. Sawtooth scale wave again, with the really short envelopes. So on the effect side, we have a little bit of chorus and a bit reverb. Of course, when we open this up, it gets bigger. And to make it even more ambient, this echo trick is really important. We are like really doing it all the way up. So there's a lot of reflection to create this kind of really big ambient mode here. And this goes into the drop with a bit of effects, and I think there was a clap sound. Let me quickly switch to the original file so that we can take a look a bit more the returns and of course a bit more automation as well. So first of all, like I mentioned earlier, there is the full remake of this track as well in this file. If I just super fast play a bit here, with the vocals and so on, but of course I can play more than that. But if you come back to the twisted version of it, the main difference here, like I said, the progression and of course the sounds and everything is the same, but the progression is slightly different. We had this full ARTBAT style sound at the drop, and it's basically this big serum sound. Really distorted, and the main distortion comes from this big asymmetric distortion here, and plus the compression. If I took them off, I mean, the really beautiful sound. You can maybe use this more ambient track, but for this track, when you add the first distortion, you bring it up all these highs, and if you try to compress it with the multiband, so that making the higher parts a bit louder, a bit more forward. The one other trick that I did is actually I had this like a EQ cut on the high end, but I added an envelope to the gain here, so that when we initiate at the beginning of the part, it goes up, so that we are opening up those EQ, kind of like a cutoff filter, and then closing up super fast to make it a bit more pluckier. And then this side chain the kick. And I added just a white noise on top to make it more like a really rich. And ARTBAT does this a lot. They often have like really aggressive distortion on their synth sounds to get this really crispy, aggressive sound, I would say. But if you take a look at the other things that we have to make it even more cinematic, I get this kind of Kashmir impact sound. Original track had it. Like I said, it just builds this cinematic feel. It's like that hit there, and then we have this string sound to make this kind of for my ears, Diva's string sounds a bit better than the Serum for this type of single sounds, because it's like more analog vibe. But this really simple sound you don't need to use for Diva. And the more important thing here was all these white noise risers, but they were not really just white noises. The first one was like this. This is just like a sweep, right? If you take a Serum and then a bandpass filter and automate it all the way up here. I think if you go to Serum filter cutoff, like going up, so brighter. The other important thing here was that the second riser, where we have this more complicated version of it. Here we have the operator, like going up. Something like this. But this is the main part where it feeds to a flanger to make sound like super weird. Like if I play. By creating this movement, this kind of creates like really weird little sounds. Again, something from the origin track. And the more important thing is like we are automating a bit volumes here and there, I think. But compared to, for example, the Bodzin track, this is much less automated, but focused on much more the composition than just simple automation. Automations comes from mainly from the like a simple cutoff automation here for the plug sound, I think. Here, for example, cutoff. And a bit EQ, and I think a bit utility as well. But this is more simpler automations. And here, like the most of the times that what we do is open up the cutoff slightly with the Serum so that the sound gets a bit more aggressive. Like here, we take a look. And then we are opening up slightly, really. And then on the drop part, we have this bass sound. I think this is a really cool sound. Sounds like this. I know it sounds quite analogish, but it's just a Serum, to be honest. Just like two square sawtooths. No effects at all. And it's basically and that was the clap that I was meaning, just a simple ambient clap before the drop. So let's start the end, and I can try to show you a bit more with the automations and so on, so that you have a bit more understanding while hearing how everything sounds together. So let's go. yeah, that's a very interesting track. Again, because it really combines different genres together and creates this really unique sound. But other than that, that was it for today's video. Again, the files will be available on my Patreon. You can get it out there and also take a look at the full remake of the track as well if you like to. But other than that, I hope you enjoyed the video and I hope you learned something, and I will catch you in the next one. Goodbye.